So we're going to start by investing in space. We're going to think about that topic. So I want to invite tech investor and a space investor, Mattias Wikman.
We hope to go to I8.
Yep, perfect. So, investing in space companies, how did you end up there? And in technology companies, what's your background?
What's my background? Do you hear me? All right. Background, I'm actually from the global IT companies. That's where I started in the business, where I gone through a couple of them. And I started like in deep tech and ended up in client executive roles, so been through a lot of them. After that, I wanted to try out to run my own company, so I've been through that phases and entrepreneurship. But nowadays, I run a family investment company where we focus on early stage tech companies. So that's where I are right now.
And part of that tech is space, and you've invested in Tom and Tina or their company, Python Space. How did you end up investing in them? Yeah, we didn't. I don't know really. We didn't search for it, that's for sure. But the thing is, I have a friend of mine that I work together with, and he was over to California, and after that, the business trip, he said, I met two Swedes. I don't know. Really normal.
Yeah, it was quite exceptional. So been into the highest mountain and to the poles, and now they're going to Mars with their own building spaceship. And I was like, did they smoke or not? Or what happened? So in a way,
Shut up
of
and
course,
take
I
my
got
money.
curious about it. So when I was possible to meet them up a couple of months later on, I realized that they were totally 100% dedicated in what they're doing and passionate. And what we are looking for is, of course, the passion, the engagement, the dedication, and that's what the thing they have. If you look further on for deep tech or investment at all, it is what you look for, and what you want to have is the ingredients in those type of areas that they have already, and also the ability to build a team, to set the culture, to have a scalable model, to have the power of execution, and also the founder team. I want to have two of them because it makes more. Figure says that it's more easier.
It's better return on investment.
Yeah, if there are two of them, or maybe three. So they have all the things.
Okay.
And if you put on the ingredients also with the space, what is happening right now, and you have a luxury of an investor to find that type of.
So it's what pretty similar to other investments you do, but this happened to be a space company. You see a lot of the things going on in the space sector, but also you found two great founders. So it's sort of the same process as every other company you invest in.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. We're going to invite back Tom and Tina on stage and talk not so much about Mars, but the business they're building to get these $200 million to get to Mars. So welcome back, Tom and Tina, on stage.
Welcome.
All right. Welcome back. And tell us about the company you're building and the market you're going for, the launch market. What's happening there?
You want to go?
So 2 years ago, 400 satellites were sent up to low Earth orbit and beyond, most of them to low Earth orbit. Last year, it was 1,000 satellites going up.
400 to 1,000, okay.
Yeah.
400 to 1,000. And this year, the first 6 months, we have 1,300. So it's absolutely exploding. And what we should note is that 97% of all these satellites going up this year so far is less than 600 kilos. So really, and most of them are actually even smaller than that. A really big satellite today is one that's the Starlink, and the Starlink is 250 kilo approximately, and that's a really big one today. So it changed completely. Another thing that's really important is who is actually the customer. And more than 90% of the satellites that went up the last 6 months are private satellites, commercial satellites. Military is only like 6-7%. That's like a 100% switch
Turnover, yeah.
of the market in less than 10 years. So that's the basis for our first business case. And our first business case, we have positioned our Eiger launcher for the small sat launch market, so we can actually. So Elon Musk will sell a rocket for about $60 million. We will sell a rocket for $1.5 million. Now, if you have a small satellite, you can't really go on your own with Elon. That's going to be too expensive. So you have to be in the ride share, which means that Elon will say, you go over here, and then you jump out where I want you to jump out.
So it's the space truck that Sven mentioned before.
Yeah,
so if you go with Elon, you
exactly.
jump on a
That's
on a
what we
truck.
say, that if Elon is a bus, we are going to be a space Uber, actually. And so the problem with going with Elon is, of course, that, it's going to be cheap, which is really great, but you're going to go with everybody else in the same orbit. And also you have to adapt to the bigger customers, their schedules. Now, when you go with small rockets like ours, you're the boss. You decide when and where to go and stuff like this. So that's our business case. It's not just us. We're actually 13 companies around the world building small teams for this small payload for this class. Interestingly, although we all know each other, and most of us actually, we even cooperate. We help each other out because we know that even if we are all successful, which is not likely, we will still not be able to meet market demand. Right now, there are 60,000 satellites waiting to be airlifted in the next 10 years.
60,000.
60,000. And we think when we have accessible, cheap and accessible way to reach space, that demand is going to completely blow out of the water, to be honest.
And you're going to test your rocket, hopefully, at Esrange. Could you also launch rockets from there later on, when it's built? And
From Esrange.
from Esrange?
Yeah, we hope so. So we are. So we'll be ready to go to space next year, and we hope that Esrange will be ready as well. They're working on it.
So for people watching from abroad, Esrange is the rocket base in the north of Sweden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say that this is something that investors are aware of? What's happening within this sector now? Is it something that everyone's talking about, or are you still kind of on the forefront of?
Of course, it's depending on where you are. If you are in the US, it's a different focus in this area, and they have come a lot further on. And if you look into Sweden, of course, it's a forefront, and we also see and hear doubts maybe, but also regarding the return on the investment. How is the business going to be like? But yeah.
So we're going to expand the discussion even more. So I want to invite back Matija Milenovic and Christer Andersson from from Porkshop and Pandion AI. Welcome up, guys.
Would you like to join us? See if we can get you guys on sort of a straight line.
Yeah, perfect. Very
There
good.
you go.
Very good.
Looks weird from my angle.
Yeah, but probably looks good from another angle. Okay, so Christer, the business you're going for, you're aiming to launch your own satellite constellation. But what's the business model of Pandion AI? What is it that you're going to do, and what does the market look like?
I see the business model as the need of information on the global scale, information that is fast. And the value of fast information is great the faster you receive it. And let's go if you are in a large company, you need information to check your competition, to check your suppliers. But if you are a government, you also need that type of information.
So what is that? How can you be faster than anyone else? What's your secret?
Oh, that's our clever concept, yes. But it's mainly consists of to distillate the information, to do this on a smart level, and do as much as possible in space. The business model today, when it comes to most of these companies that we are competing with, are doing a lot of information handling on the ground. So we try to do it as much as possible in orbit.
Okay, so we've seen now, for example, there's been a volcano eruption. And now we only had, you checked before, you could only find old images of that a few days back. But so I guess in your case that would be tracking this more in real time, or at least much faster, and do the processing up in the satellite. So if something happens, a volcano eruption or a flood or whatever, your customers could get access to that much faster than anyone else.
Yeah, what we succeeded in doing now for the first time for me from the iPhone, to see that there existed data at least, but they were a couple of days too slow. But we are focusing on delivering the correct information. If we had a customer that was interested in volcanoes or other type of disaster, they would have an alert, maybe as an SMS, showing now this volcano is erupting. So that information can go directly from satellite down to the right.
You don't have to download it first. Okay, right.
But then you of course have the problem with coverage and cloud, and that still consists there. But it's a question of the number of satellites.
Okay. So Matija, you talked about we've still kept we're in space, but we're still pretty close to Earth still with these satellites. But you talked about the entire space economy and not just around Earth, but out in the solar system. What do you see? What's the business case there?
The business case is that we have a lot more resources in space than we do on our planet, and there's no way to spin this otherwise. We have to come to this sobering realization. We at Porkchop want to help humanity overcome the economical and technological barriers that have, stopped us since the beginning of time. If we can be successful in this, we're going to open up space to not just space, but space's resources to all of us for the first time ever.
What kind of resources?
Mostly things, we call them rare earth metals because they're rare on Earth. They're not
Right.
rare out there. And also, you're talking like platinum, but also more common things like cobalt, like nickel, and also energy. I was talking to some guys earlier today, and there seems to be more concepts springing up about harvesting energy directly in space instead of from the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, but if you want to convince me as an investor, is this something, the investors, maybe like you have at least the venture capitalists, they have a 5 to 7 year horizon, maybe you have a longer one. But if you're going to make the case here, is this a company where you get the 5 to 7 year return, or is it 50 to 70 years, or what is it?
Somewhere in between, something more log on.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, we'll keep
All
it
right,
open.
so not something we will cash out, by when Tina and Tom goes to Mars.
No.
Okay. Do you have any questions from
I
the...
do, and thank you so much for asking chat questions. That is what I'm doing. I'm not being terrible.
No, exactly. She's not,
checking Instagram while I'm up here. I have a question for Tom and Tina from Katarina Eriksson. Are you thinking of something like a micro investment or crowd investment where people can invest smaller sums, like Blue Shift did in the US recently?
So smaller investments.
Small investments?
Yeah, so actually our investors group, they are not individual investors, they're already inside what is called a special investment vehicle. So we have 24 investors now. There were 4 like 1.5 years ago. Matthias was one of the first ones. And they have grown, and we'll start another one of these But still, if you want to invest, it's going to be like a minimum of $10,000 or $20,000 or something like that.
But then you take it to the group, and they're called Space Cowboys, by the way.
But then, if you want to invest less, so we have two of our competitors already are now on Nasdaq. One of them are on Nasdaq before they are using what is called SPACs. So they are on Nasdaq even before they sent up the first rocket. Yeah. And that means that small investors will have the possibility to go in with $100 or whatever.
Exactly, and it's becoming increasingly popular. That's kind of crowdfund investing. That you can invest small sums, a few $100s even. I have a few $100 that are burning a hole in my pocket. You haven't considered that?
Your $100?
Yes. Awesome. Okay, I'll give you 2 afterwards.
Walk around sort of like a church.
Yeah. Okay. You can swish me money, and I'll give it to Tom. I promise.
For sure.
No, but it's a good point, though, because I think a lot of people want to feel like they're a part of it.
I understand that. Yeah. I think we should give it a thought. Yeah.
So there are some legal considerations, and we also have to be careful because it is a risky business, and you have to be careful too that people that invest in you actually understand.
There is a risk,
There is a risk to lose everything.
We see a lot of people nodding here. Do you have any reflections on this comment? Is this something that you have in
Pork Shop, are you going to do crowdfunding investing, Christer or Mattia?
I couldn't agree with what was said more. I mean, space is, really in the limelight these days, and it's very popular, but it is a risky business, and a lot of startups fail. Space is not an exception. So definitely opening up space via SPACs or other kind of investment vehicles is great, but this is why events like this are so important, to educate people in space so that they can make an informed decision before they invest.
But that all said, though, I mean, right now, the valuations that the rocket companies are getting is just crazy. And I'm talking companies here, they're like us, who haven't even flown yet. And the valuations are so insane that they're actually being compared to the internet age. And I got to say that even that is not the truth, because this is by far exceeds even the internet. And I think it's because it shows the demand out there right now and the will for this to happen. And also, really, this is so vast. This is not, we're going to cover the whole planet, which was the big thing during the internet. This is like the universe. And I got to tell you, when the valuations came with internet, I was kind of, that's a lot of fluff. That's all going to go crashing. And I was right about many of the companies when it came to that, but I was also terribly wrong when it came to some other ones. So that's a judgment. It's good to understand the risk, but I think it's also important to really understand the opportunity here.
Do you have any more questions from the audience?
I do.
The hopping audience.
There's a couple more. I'm not sure who can answer this one, but it says the inter-satellite laser communication. Have it never been done before? It sounds like it should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah,
Is it one of those technologies
movies
that wasn't needed yet or not possible?
So space lasers, is that new?
Space.
Anyone know anything about space lasers?
So space lasers, for example, SpaceX is sending up with their new Generation 2 Starlink satellites. They have lasers on them because it's cool, but I also think it's useful for communication between the satellites.
Oh, for lasers, okay. Yeah, that's super important. That's going to increase the speed.
What I see is important in the pretty close future is a build-up of an infrastructure up there that help you guys and help us. And included in that, it will be space traffic management. That's important. And there you have government and private company that have to be working together. Another important part is the communication up there and handling of data, storing data, pushing data around, and that's a really important infrastructure that have to be built up. And that's an infrastructure you have on ground. You should have it in space also. And if you have that, I mean, the business will create themselves almost.
I just want to add to that. So what happens with the laser and SpaceX, that's the next generation like you talked about. So we have 2 cables across the Atlantic between London and New York today. And when so these cables are super important for stock exchange of prices and the bots that actually check the prices and do most of the stock trades today. When he's get that running, he's going to beat them both with about 10 hundredths of a second, which means that all traders will have to change to SpaceX.
Right. Well, any more?
We do have a little bit, and maybe elaborate on this question as well a bit, because one of the things that you often hear when you're talking about this micro satellite initiative, obviously, is being, there's a huge need for it, or is it? Is it too many companies getting involved in this now? And what's going to happen? What do you think? Is it still a good investment to join these sort of initiatives, or will a big, huge company buy everybody in the end?
Traditionally, it has been, governmental organization, ESA and NASA, building big monoliths like that. And what you see now is really interesting. I would like more of the business people in Sweden really look into this, because what's happening is interesting. You have a new business mind coming in and creating all these, especially remote sensing satellites. They have a completely different mindset. Some of them don't bother about building the satellite. They just buy a factory building the satellite. They focus on the end customers. And you see also a change from being a complete operator, building satellite, operate the satellite, and do all the stuff, to companies that go into part of this. This is really interesting now. There are a lot of opportunities within that. So you don't need to be that large. You don't need to be Airbus. You don't need to be Planet. You can make a part of it and do big business. I think.
All right, and with that, we would like to thank the panel so much for a discussion in the business of space. Thank you very much. Thank you.